I want to introduce you to Sophie. So if you don't already know Sophie, she is one of the co-directors of The Joyful, who are a brand and marketing consultancy organization. And they're amazing at helping people authentically share who they are. And the reason Sophie wanted to talk about this, about visibility online, one is because this year has been profound for getting people online and having to be visible, which isn't something a lot of people are comfortable with. And she wanted to share one from her own personal experience, her challenges as well as triumphs of being online and being visible in general, kind of emerged with and combined with her experience around branding and leadership communication, so that you can go out powerfully online and in the world and share who you are authentically and make a real difference for yourself and your brand. So that's Sophie. Over to you, Sophie. I'll stop sharing my screen and yeah, look forward to the session.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and hello everybody. I'm just going to share my screen so that I can give you my full attention and present. So, Sarah, just quickly, do you know how to get the chat box and the presenting screen up at the same time?
Yeah, if you go to the top of your screen and just kind of hover, it should have the chat box open up. That's how it comes up on my screen. If anyone else has any tips on Zoom presentation viewing. If you want, I can manage chat for you.
Yeah. Although it would be, if you could, it would be good. But it's kind of quite important because I've got loads of questions, so I want to be able to see your answers.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I've got it. It's all good.
Got it.
Chat. Okay, cool. We're ready.
Awesome.
So, hi everybody. My name is Sophie, and I am. My name is Sophie, and I am the co-founder and a brand specialist from The Joyful. This is me and Alice, who's also in this session. And we are brand and marketing experts for movers, shakers, and change makers. And this is a very, very special presentation because it is the first time we have taken our new branding out for a test drive. So can we just get a little whoop whoop for our new brand? Thanks. So the way that today's session is going to work is I want it to be as interactive as possible, and I really want to hear from you guys about your experience. Kind of a disclaimer, and also actually a really good key point of this conversation, and that I was just saying to Beth and Sarah, is that this morning I had a colossal end of 2020 massive breakdown. And somehow I've managed to find myself looking extremely jazzy on a screen, being visible with you lovely people. So a large part of what I want to talk about today is how to get over that point where you're just like, I can't do this. Like I had this morning, and I'm sure many of you have experienced at different stages of your journeys. So this is a super safe space. Please share as openly as you feel comfortable in doing so, and I will do the same. And with that in mind, there are quite a few questions that I've put in this document so that it's not just me talking at you the whole time. So when we get to question points, please use the chat box to ask your questions or answer and engage with one another. But also please use it throughout the whole presentation if you've got any questions or you want to have share your insights at all, and I will keep an eye on it and I will try my best to get back to you. And Sarah, if you could also just keep an eye just to make sure that I don't miss anything. Perfect. Okay, so today's talk is all about how to be visible online. And I'm not going to go into too much technical detail about how to use Facebook Live or how to post on Instagram, or even like what kind of conventional like formatting you should use for a beautiful Instagram post. I'm going to talk about the emotional side of posting online. So firstly, we're going to have a look at why we need to be visible as business leaders. And our why is going to be different for each and every one of us. And there will, of course, be some crossover. But when we get really clear on why we're doing something, it's a lot easier when we have moments like I had this morning to get ourselves past it and show up anyway. Then we're going to have a look at the all-important getting out of our own way. Again, that kind of ties back into when we know why we're doing something and we know why we're getting in our own way, it's a lot easier to get out of our own way. And then finding your voice. And this is where the brand experience that I have is hopefully going to be useful for you in how to create a blueprint of what you want to talk about. And actually at this point, put your hand up if you have been told by someone that you need to post online and that you need to be visible. Good, everyone, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. Put your hand up if you've got past your barriers and you've got out of your own way and you've sat down and you've been like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be visible. And you go to share something and you don't really have anything to share. That, Beth, you're like the only one that's like, I've always got something to share. But yeah, I mean, this is so common, and that's one of the things that we work a lot with businesses on is how to define your voice, how to define your message, so that when you come to sit down, you know what you want to say, and you know who you're saying it to too. And then we're going to wrap it all up with, so I've got this song in my, you know, the let's get physical. No, that's the theme tune for the last part, but with visible. And we will then open it up to you guys and have a proper discussion. So, why do we need to be visible? Why do you want to be visible? Tell me in the chat, why do you want to be visible? While you guys are typing, I'll tell you a bit about why I want to be visible. And it's because I really believe that businesses can make a difference in the world and that we really need to be the change that we want to see. And for me, that message is so important that I want to share it to as many people as I can possibly share it to. So Andrea says that clients can find her. Absolutely. It's extremely important these days to be visible online so that our clients can find us and we can stand out from the noise. Dave says, I don't, but I've worked with Dave before and he's got a lot to say. So, and then, Antoinette says to raise awareness about ethical cleaning and improving the rights of cleaners in the industry. Absolutely. I think probably for all of us, being visible is going to be about sharing the thing that we really, really believe in and why our business exists in the first place. Beth says, help people connect and make money. Oh yeah, I love those three things. Okay, that's fantastic. So I think we've got a really clear understanding of why we're all here. Ooh. How do I go back? Sorry. Oh, wait. Da-da-da. There we go. I do honestly own a tech company, so yay. So being visible means sharing your purpose with confidence, being thoughtful in all communications, building a strong and consistent brand identity, showing up, and again, and again, and again, even when you have a colossal 2020 breakdown in the morning, being authentic always, leading with your values, and building connections. And I think that pretty much covers what most of you said in the chat as well. Seth has said, I want to be visible so that not only am I seen, but heard. For mine, as well as the other good businesses here, have a lot of value to add. Exactly. However, if you don't shout it at people, they can't hear. If they don't hear, they won't react. I love that, actually. I think that's what I stand for as well. It's a call to action. And I also really believe that when we find the courage to be visible ourselves, we give other people the courage to do so, or the permission to do so too. And even though it can sometimes be extremely terrifying, it really is the only way to get our message heard. And as we'll find out later in this presentation, our messages are so much bigger than we are. And if you have ever seen mine and the Joyful's social media presence, you will see that pictures like this of Alice and I flamboyantly draping ourselves over different objects is quite common in our branding. And that's part of our way of showing our personality and what we stand for as an agency that really wants to bring joy to business. So this is some questions that I'd really like you to consider. And we don't have time to go through all of them, but really my main question is not just why do you want to be visible, but what impact will being visible have for your audiences? So if you could just have a quick think about that and write whatever comes to you in the chat box, what impact will you, as Seth said, it's not just about him, it's about the impact he can have. What impact will you have if you are visible for your audiences? Adrian says, people feel more confident and braver to do what they need to do. Sarah says, people can relate to you and see something else might be possible if they're stuck. Absolutely. I think for me, that's the thing with authenticity is like, if you pretend to be perfect, then other people think they have to be perfect. And we're not perfect. And it's so liberating. Hurrah! Dave said, trust, and for me, a feeling of I am not the only one. Yes, absolutely, Dave. For me, for my audiences, I want to be visible because I really want business leaders to feel like what they have to say is important. And I want to help business leaders to define what they have to say in a way that really resonates with them and their audiences and gets them seen and gets people contacting them. And that for me feels like a really important reason to get myself out there. Susie says, honesty and my own story. Oh, just lost it. Honesty and my own story resonates with other Gen X women and has meant new clients as well. Absolutely. We've got quite a lot of new clients from us sharing our, things that traditionally you would say never share in public. We've got clients from because people can relate to it. Andrea says, inspire them to take action, to make the leap, to do what they love. I love that. Yes, absolutely. Beth, changing the world, using business for good, helping people live their truth so we can champion authenticity, empathy, collaboration, and kindness. Antoinette says, eventually eliminating the option for cheap cleaning, finding like-minded people to shout with me and make a change. Exactly. And I think, we're all part of the Good Business Club. Like, we're all out for positive change. And that is such an important reason to have our message be heard. Susie, even if it's just taking away one tip from a recent IG live I did about saying sorry less at work, that's impactful for them and me. Absolutely. I think I can take something away from that today as well. So I think we can all agree that the impact that we're out to create is bigger than ourselves. So when your amygdala kicks off and tells you that you can't, come back to this why. This is bigger than you are. Your purpose is bigger than you are. Your business is bigger than you are. So, just one more here. Seth. So, support the community. From the perspective of my business, I'd like to support a business in growing their revenue and feel safe and supported to delegate and non-revenue generating tasks. This is a long post, so I will have a look at it again afterwards, Seth, but I completely agree about really being there and being present for the community and having a stake in the ground. So with that in mind, let's move on to getting out of our own way. So what's been stopping you from getting visible? We know why you want to be visible. We know that you've got a huge amount to say and a huge amount of impact that you want to have, but why are you here? What's stopping you being visible? Sarah says, worried about what people will think. I think that's a super common one. Adrian says, all the tinsel that takes me over when I am on calls in December. Attack of the tinsel. Andrea, finding time to consistently post on Instagram. Adrian, they multiply every 15 minutes. I think one thing actually, a good point to make at this point around posting on Instagram, you don't have to post every day. Like, gone are the days that the algorithm favors you if you post every day. Like, posting once a week, if what you're doing is really sharing your heart and your truth and your impact, is enough. So if we just take away that pressure, like, obviously it's more ideal the more you post, but if we just take off the pressure and just say we're just going to do it once a week on a Wednesday, and we're going to hold ourselves accountable to that, like, that's enough. And I think that's what I really want to get through to you, is like tiny steps, tiny little bites, and then suddenly it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. So Dan says, hard to be noticed with so much noise and news. Absolutely. Like, it's one of the hardest things these days, is everybody's talking and not everybody's listening. And, you know, that's why it's even more important to get really clear on what you stand for and what your message is. Alice says, consistently and constantly aren't the same thing. I think a lot of people create unnecessary pressure for themselves on social media. And she's absolutely right. It's like, you know, consistently is important every week on a Wednesday, for example, but constantly is just pressure that you really don't need, especially right now. And also that there is a lot of noise, and it's much better to make sure that we're standing out from that. So a lot of people feel like the confidence to be seen is a massive blocker for them. And one of the most important things really is that visibility is having the confidence to be seen. So with that in mind, put your hand up if you have ever been stopped from sharing something because you've been worried about what people would think of you. Put your hand up if you've ever been stopped from sharing something because you think that what you have to share is really stupid. Put your hand up if you've ever been stopped by sharing something because you're scared of a reaction. So a lot about how to move through our blockages is to build the confidence in our conviction, regardless of what anyone else is going to think about it. And there's me and Alice again, having confidence in our conviction. There's me having even more confidence in my conviction. So actually, this is a really important point that I didn't mean to skip over. Oh, confidence is a choice. And that is something that a lot of people find quite difficult to understand. I'll tell you something about myself, is that most people who know me would say that I was a really confident person. But the reality is that I'm actually quite shy, pretty awkward, and an introvert that just learned how to seem like they were confident. And I think that's the thing, like going back to my story from this morning of, you know, massive, literally half an hour before coming on this call was like, and then I made a choice to show up, be myself, and be okay with that, you know, even though that it wasn't going to be perfect, because again, nobody is perfect. So a large part about being confident is choosing to show up and choosing to be confident, even when you don't feel like it. And that's something that it's taken me quite a long time to understand that. So I just wanted to add that in because I think it's a really important point, that you don't need to be anything more. You just need to choose to put on a way of being in the moment. And the more you do it, the more it feels like you, the more it feels easy. So with that in mind, that brings us to one of my favorite topics, which is imposter syndrome. How many people have heard of imposter syndrome? Put your hand up. Great, lots of you. So imposter syndrome is something that I didn't even know existed until the day that I quit my job to start The Joyful with Alice. And I remember it so clearly. I'd quit my job, I'd, met this amazing person that I was going to set up this amazing business with, and I had all this excitement and purpose and passion. And I was sitting at my desk on my last day, and then suddenly my brain started to go, who the hell do you think you are? Like, you can't do this. You don't even know any. I mean, I'd been working in the industry for 10 years, but my brain was going, you don't know anything about marketing. You don't know anything about communication. Like, you can't go out there. People are going to find out that you're a fake. And so basically, imposter syndrome looks like, I'm a fake. Why would anyone care? I don't know enough. I'm not really an expert. Someone else is better than me anyway, so I may as well just be quiet about it. I'll be found out. I'll be shamed. Best just hide here a spell. And, it's so ridiculously common that I think one of the most important things for us to remember, as well as confidence as a choice, is imposter syndrome is almost inevitable in the process of becoming visible. So Adrian says, I'm trying to write a book at the moment, except ironically, my self-doubt keeps forcing me to pause and almost give it up. I mean, I completely feel you, Adrian, because I've been trying to write a book for about 10 years now. And every time I sit down, miraculously, there's always something else that I need to do. And it is that fear of getting it wrong that sometimes stops us from doing anything at all. And this is the visual representation of imposter syndrome, according to me and Alice. So dealing with imposter syndrome then. So this is, and Alice and I actually did this together yesterday. We discussed what we do when the inevitable voice that tells us we're not good enough comes up and tries to keep us small. And in that, actually, the first and most important point is that I acknowledge the negative voice and I thank it, because it's just trying to keep me safe. So rather than making it wrong, I often just give myself a little pat on the head. I'm like, thank you very much, but you're not needed right now. And the more that we acknowledge something and don't get it wrong, and the more that we accept it as being a natural part of being a human, the more it doesn't feel like it needs to shout, because it feels like it's been acknowledged and it feels safe. And actually all it's doing is saying, this isn't safe. So it's quite a nice little, try patting yourself on the head, and it's a really nice way of moving through when that voice starts talking nastily to you. So with that, talking to it like it's a friend, don't make it wrong. Share with others. And again, it's so completely normal that I've done quite a lot of talks around imposter syndrome, and we've actually got some clients that have been with us now for several years because they saw me talk about imposter syndrome and resonated so much with it and thought they were completely alone and that no one else felt like that ever, that they just wanted to work with us so that they knew that they weren't. And probably because we're quite good at marketing, but I think it was also the fact that they felt not so alone. No, the more successful you become, the louder the voice becomes. And thank you very much. I'm doing it anyway. And then, like we said earlier, it's all about taking small steps to achieve your big goal. And when we look at the small steps, when we just show up, it suddenly doesn't feel quite so terrifying. So I'm just going to quickly go back to So Andrea says that she helps people to identify their inner critics, the saboteurs, aka shitty committee. I love that. She says, Adrian, give me a shout if you want to meet yours. Exactly, Sophie. Acknowledge it and be curious about the emotion underneath. So yeah, it's just about acknowledging and about not making them wrong. Although I do really like the shitty committee as a concept. So finding your voice. What do you have to say? And I know that you guys all have an awful lot to say, and you've said quite a lot already. But in terms of, if you could just tell me, in one sentence, what you want me to know about what you're up to with your business, what would it be? Tell me in the chat. So for me, oh, okay. So with Adrian says, changing national government policy accidentally. I'm really curious, Adrian, to find out how you accidentally change national government policy. And maybe I can take some tips for you, because there's a lot of policies that I would change right now. But that's fantastic. For me, I have to say around the importance of values in business, and how marketing and communication always needs to be built from a place of values and a place of purpose. And that's what I always come back to in everything that I put out in my business communications. Antoinette says she believes in a fair day's pay for a fair day's work, and the knock-on effect in an exceptional cleaning service. I completely agree with you. Like, honestly, I don't think there can be anything nicer than coming home to like an actually clean place. It's like, for me anyway, it's a beautiful feeling. So I completely agree. And also that's already there, Antoinette, 2 messaging pillars for you to go out and really consistently talk about. So I'm going to move on, but we'll come back to that just because I'm conscious of time. So this is the importance of getting clear on your messaging. So I'm going to send these slides out, and it would be really great for you to spend a bit of time thinking about this to really create yourselves a structure to be able to go out and communicate powerfully when it comes to being visible. So the things that you really need to consider, or that I would suggest that you consider, I'm trying really hard to watch myself when I say need, because no one needs to do anything, but I would suggest that you ask yourself, like, what are the 3 topics that you could talk endlessly about? Like, for me, it's about the importance of businesses doing good and the impact businesses can have in the world, and the impact businesses can have just on individuals' lives of the people working within those businesses. I could endlessly talk about the importance of purpose and the importance of joy in business. And I could endlessly talk about the importance of destigmatizing mental health and the whole idea of perfectionism in human beings and how we are all just who we are. So why are you passionate about these topics? Who needs to hear them? And why should they listen to you? And when you get really clear on on your answers to each of these questions, then you start to create for yourself a kind of blueprint that you can then take when you go out there and start to communicate to your audiences. So with that, write down, and you can take a couple of minutes to do this now, whether you want to do it in the chat or on a piece of paper. Write down your W's. So who are you? What do you want to talk about? Why do you want to talk about it? Who are you talking to? How are you going to share it? When are you going to do it? So we can think of this as kind of the blueprint meets the commitment that you're going to make to yourself after this session. You sure can. Adrian says, can he write down his W's as F's, as in the F's I want to give? Sure. And the reason that I'm asking you to do this is because, first of all, in half an hour, we don't have time to go into a whole messaging strategy. But when we get really, really clear on what we stand for, so who we are is kind of, it's not just our name, it's what we stand for in the world, which then leads into what we want to talk about, which is the kind of expression of what we stand for in the world. Why we want to talk about it. It's a reminder to ourselves of why it's more important than we are. And that really helps us to get over any obstacles or any imposter syndrome. And actually on this point, someone said to me yesterday that every time they have that rising fear coming up, they realize that actually it's something that they really do need to do, because the rising fear shows how important it is. And like, I was just like, oh, I thought the rising fear meant go and hide under a cover. But apparently it means when you feel that, it's about actually seeing the fact that this is important to you. And if it's important to you, it's going to be important to somebody else too. So who are you talking to? Really important. Like, why would they care? Why would they want to hear what you have to say? And how are you going to share it? On Facebook, on Instagram, on a Facebook Live, via an email? When are you going to do it? And this is when it comes back to accountability. So I'll share these slides with you. So if you haven't had time to write it down, you will do. And then here's my, I'm not great at using slides. Here's my one. So here's the big here I am. So I am Sophie. I want to talk about the importance of being visible online. I'm passionate about this because I want more business leaders to find self-expression and share their passions. I think this will have a huge and positive impact on their businesses. Every Friday, I'm going to do a video aimed at helping business owners find self-expression. I'm going to JFDI because it's important for others to also hear it. And when I show up and share, I give others the permission to do so too. So this is my commitment. Susan, every Friday. But here's my commitment. And I own a marketing agency, and I know the importance of sharing your message online. And I'm not going to commit to posting online more than once a week, because I don't believe that I can honor that commitment, because I don't believe that I have the time and the resource to do so. And it's enough to do it just once a week, as long as I do it consistently. And it's enough to just talk about something like self-expression for business leaders, because there are so many different ways that I can talk about self-expression for business leaders that it's never going to get old. It's never going to stop being my passion. And the more people that I can reach through these messages, the more people are going to be standing up and sharing their self-expression. And I think that's where a really important point about marketing strategies, and for big businesses, marketing strategies are obviously extremely important. And for solo businesses who are doing everything, you just need to have a few things that you love to talk about, and talk about them. That's it. Just talk about them any which way you can talk about them. And make sure that you're talking about them from you, not from what you think people want to hear, because you have something that other people don't have. And that's what people need to hear. So change starts with a choice followed by an action. So my invitation for you guys after this session is to set yourselves an intention, create some stretchy goals. So that might be, I'm going to post a live on Facebook every single Friday for the next 3 months. And when I say stretchy goals, you have to feel like, when you say it, it can't just be like, I'm going to put a story up of my cat. It has to feel uncomfortable. Otherwise it's not a stretchy goal. Turn your imposter syndrome into a mantra. For me, the best one, and I actually have it on framed in a picture, is my imposter syndrome tells me I can't. So I turn it into a mantra that tells me I can. And I repeat that to myself so much. Yes, I can. Whatever works for you is just switching that around and saying it to yourself over and over again until you believe it. Get clear on your why and come back to your why, because that will be like your North Star that will obliterate all of that imposter syndrome and all of those voices anyway. Make a commitment to yourself and write it down, which is those W's that we looked at earlier, and do it, even though it scares you, because it scares everyone. It really does. Thank you very much. Now it's open to you guys to ask any questions that you might have.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Sophie. Yeah, the part of the session now really is to kind of just engage in any discussion. So it might be that you guys have particular challenges that either Sophie's touched upon that you want to go a bit deeper, or if there's something else that's come up that you'd like to kind of talk about, or even just share. Is there experience that you want to share into the mix as well, of either what you're doing that makes a difference, or anything around that as well? So as Sophie said, open to you guys if anyone wants to add anything into the discussion.
And you can they take themselves on video?
Oh yeah, take us off mute as well. Rather than the chat. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
A lot of love in the chat. Yeah. Great. I think you probably covered everything then, Sophie. Jan, go on.
Question. Hi, I'm Jan. Really important, imposter syndrome. People bottle it up for a long time. I've been around the block a few times, and it's something that's really difficult to admit to. And it's really valuable. Your presentation's been really, really valuable. I think it's really important. My question is, because what you're doing is you're recognizing it's a syndrome, and that one way of getting over it, you have to be confident in any kind of business or enterprise. But what's really important as well is how you deal with the feedback that you get, because what shapes a successful enterprise and business going forward is obviously the way, and some of that feedback can be quite harsh sometimes. Often it's very, very harsh, and maintaining resilience in the face of indifferent, negative, and occasionally people can be too enthusiastic and it's actually not helpful. So it's the imposter syndromes. It's important to recognize it and share your confidence to the world. But your experience, it'd be useful just to hear your experience on how one can incorporate the feedback so that it's useful, and rather than kind of putting you back in a box.
Yeah, so for me, imposter syndrome is always like, it's never about so much anyone's feedback. So when someone gives me feedback, I don't experience that as imposter syndrome. It's for me, imposter syndrome is much more insidious.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the voice in the head that tells you on kind of repeat that you can't do something, or you're not good enough, or you're going to be found out, which weirdly in my experience I've never actually had when I have actually not been good enough. Like, I actually used to be like so super ballsy at the beginning of my career, and was like all about fake it till you make it, and never had any kind of imposter syndrome. And it's only been since actually knowing my staff that it's come. So for me, like, I'd be interested to understand exactly what you mean, because for me, feedback from other people and the impact that has, because it certainly does have impact, and then I could go away and like ruminate on it a lot and maybe make it mean something. For me, that's different from imposter syndrome.
I wasn't thinking so much. I was saying that imposter syndrome is a real thing, and it's really important to recognize it. But when you go out into the world, so a lot of your what you're suggesting is about how to build your confidence and how to be confident in what you're saying and be clear about your voice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, rather than the imposter syndrome, I'm actually thinking about the business proposition and making the business proposition more successful. It has to incorporate feedback, and actually part of the imposter syndrome comes from the nature of the feedback that you get. So you, as well as having that ability to be confident and to tell people about what you're doing with confidence and have a voice, there has to be also an ability to recognize feedback in a resilient way.
Yeah. I completely understand. I think
otherwise, if you think you found your voice and you go out there and the first 3 people that you speak to tell you to bug off or something, then it's how one make sure that you keep your voice, or how do you assess the value of the feedback? Because it is that two-way process. Any business, in order to get bigger and more successful, you need to manage a balance really between the two things.
Yeah, I completely agree. The way
People
that
aren't confident enough. They're fantastic. They've got great products and services and a lot to offer, and they're not confident enough. But then to be successful, you then need to also be able to incorporate and maintain some resilience to the world.
Yeah, and I think that comes back to my point about the why, because while I feel like we definitely evolve how we communicate things, and maybe even we evolve the focus in which we're communicating things, the why that got us to start our business in the first place, especially for all of us in the Good Business Club, that's the kind of guide. So for me, just being true to, like, so for example, with Antoinette, she's super passionate. You, Antoinette, are super passionate about changing the cleaning industry. That's not going to change. The way she communicates that might change with the feedback that she gets on, you know, maybe someone might be offended by something, and then you take that on board and you go, okay, and change it. So I completely agree with you. I do think that being clear on your purpose and driven by that above anything else is for me anyway, it's a really good way of steering myself through times that I've had not so great feedback.
That's a really, I think there's a saying somewhere that if a person has a why, then they can endure all sorts of. Yeah, no, that's a good answer. Yeah.
And I think it's because we're human, right? So our brains are, and we have egos, and so our brains want to be right, and we don't want to look stupid. And when we use ourselves as the guidance, there's always going to be room for being knocked back. But when we have something bigger than ourselves, we can kind of become more than our ego and more than the feedback. And I guess that's, you know, that from what you were saying, Adrian, I'm guessing that that's what kind of drives your accidental governmental change, because it's not just about you, it's about what you're up for in the world.
Yeah, go on, Antoinette. Yeah.
So my challenge is that I've got two big whys. I've got a work why. It's the thing that I ought to be sort of banging the drum about, and I'm passionate about that. But then I've got a life why that just keeps getting buried and buried and buried because I haven't got time to talk about it in my work why, in the place of my work why. How can people balance those two things?
I don't know, because that is currently one of my kind of biggest challenges as well. I think we've all kind of experienced that in some way, in terms of, you know, like writing, like halfway through writing a book. Like it's tricky, because especially when we're so passionate about what our business stands for, it can become all consuming. I know Sarah's experienced that as well.
Yeah, I was gonna just nodding furiously, because it's been very much my year as well. As obviously when you start up a business, it is something that's very close to you, especially when it is, but you also then lose yourself in it, and you're like, actually, who am I versus what are the values of the business itself? And I actually worked with Alice and Sophie a little bit to kind of dissect that, and what naturally came about was the values of the business was one part of my value, and there were just a few others that I wasn't talking about in line with it. And I've actually spent a lot of time this year looking at my personal brand and going, what's my voice as an individual? How can I communicate some of those values through the business I'm running, but also have a platform to talk about other things, and distinguishing the two of them? And it's been a really exciting journey. And if there's any fear there that they're not going to align, like, don't worry about it, because if you created something, you're always going to have your values within that. It might just be that there's some that you aren't speaking about, and having your own platform and your own kind of personal brand, in a sense, has been made a real difference to be able to communicate more impactfully for me this year.
And again, going back to having those sort of guiding whys of, like, you don't have to talk about absolutely everything. Just choose the one or two topics that you really could talk about forever, and have those be your business topics that you talk about. And then that clears your brain up to then be able to find, to be able to make space for the other topics that matter to you.